Let's return to the awareness and perceive how we are perceiving. The awareness is the base. We're all coming from the awareness, and from there we're discovering reality. But each one of us is moving from their awareness towards reality in a very different direction, in a very different way. Not just each one of us, but even within ourselves all the time. This is what we're doing right now, is we're changing the way that we direct our awareness. So the first change we did is we close our eyes and we return internally so that we're not confused by what's happening outside of us. We're not allowing the awareness to leak out into the external world. But beyond that, the awareness can be directed towards life inwardly, where the awareness is perceiving existence as behind it, or outwardly, where the awareness is perceiving its existence in front of it. When awareness perceives existence in front of it, it's hallucinating. This is not the nature of life. Life is not after the awareness. Life is before the awareness. Life is projecting awareness. When we're used to living based on the senses, we make this basic mistake that we see awareness as behind life, and really awareness is in front of life. Awareness is the cover of life. Life is behind awareness. Life is before awareness. Life exists, and then it comes forth to become aware of itself. And this life that gives rise to awareness, this life leaves with us when we leave the body. When we perceive awareness and then life after it, then we might feel threatened that when we leave the body, then where will be life? But when we perceive life as behind awareness, then wherever we might be aware, whichever world we might find ourselves in, whether it's inside the body or outside the body, always life is behind awareness. So the same process is taking place. Wherever we are perceiving, life is first, and life gives rise to perception. And so if we want to become aware of our soul, it's not going to be by becoming aware of the things outside of our awareness, the things that we can be aware of. It's going to happen when we direct awareness towards its source. And that's the only real thing that we can perceive. Everything else is information. Information is partial reality at best. Sometimes information is not real at all. Sometimes information is based in absolute illusion. But information that's accurate is partial reality. It's a piece. It's something that is real, but it needs context. It needs to be perceived within the whole before we can say that it is true. But what's behind awareness, the soul that gives rise to awareness, the ability to perceive that we have access to through being alive, through receiving existence from the source. The ability that we have to perceive is based on something real and true. And that truth is behind perception. That truth is absolute. That truth will never leave. If it leaves, then there will be no perception. wherever there's perception, there is that truth for perception to lean on. And so that's where our soul can be found. The reason perception is the way that it is, the reason we perceive differently than others, is because we have a different aspect of the collective soul through which we see everything that we perceive. We're aware of ourselves, and that self is a spark of the collective soul that lives in all of life. And that spark is specific to us. It's part of the collective where we are one with everything, and it's also individualized to the specific aspect of the collective that we are experiencing. If we go further behind awareness, what is giving life to this spark? What allows this individualized aspect of reality to be perceived? If we go further, deeper within the soul, we will find the collective soul that lives within all. And so wherever we're perceiving, the layers of perception are what we perceive, that's external, that's not absolutely real. That's at best parts of reality, bits and pieces that have very little context. Reality is so big that we cannot perceive the accurate context. And so that's the cover, that's the shell. Behind the shell is perception, the awareness with which we perceive. And behind awareness is a life force. Behind the life force is the existence of the collective. And so if we were to try to express who is perceiving, we might say the individual is perceiving. That would be one layer of truth. That would be the layer that's behind perception. Or we might say the collective is perceiving through the individual. That's if we go one layer deeper. The collective is the only one that can perceive. What is he perceiving? He is perceiving the individual lenses within which he got dressed. The collective is perceiving his own dress through the individual. There can be no one else that perceives other than the collective, because always perception is a dress. Always behind perception is life. Always behind life is the collective force that lives. And so there, by going behind the awareness, behind perception, we discover the root of life. We discover the source. The source that dwells within all. The only reason there is everything that is because the source dwells within them and gives them existence. So when we return to awareness, we return closer to life. If we're busy with something outside of ourselves, if we're hallucinating something that has been recorded by our senses, then we have left the source of life. Then we are in a very distant place called the world of separation, the world of parts, the world of divine fragments. The original light that shines within all the worlds has been shattered in our imagination. And there's nothing there that can possibly allow for the unification of the parts. As we go closer, as we become aware of awareness internally, as we are aware of our existence within the body, we're coming closer to the source. We're coming closer to the real nature of things, to the real way of how we are, to the real us. As we go behind the curtain, we go behind perception, then the intelligence will know that there is life behind perception. This is something the imagination does not have access to. The imagination only has access until perception. Behind perception, only the intelligence can access. The imagination cannot draw. There isn't what to draw. But the intelligence can know because of the fact that there is perception. Perception cannot exist without a life that's projecting it. And behind that life is the source. Here, the intelligence can tell us about the existence of that source, and yet even the intelligence cannot define what it is that it knows that exists. It can know that it exists, but what it knows that exists is undefinable, indescribable. It will never be perceived because perception is one of its tools, how it manifests, how it reveals its presence, but not its essence. Its essence cannot be revealed within perception. And this is called dveikus. When this awakens, when our body can feel, when our imagination can be convinced, even though it cannot draw what it's being convinced of, but it can know it. It can remember it. It can ingrain it in all of the organs so that they know to react to this essence and not to the drawings. This is called dveikus. Attachment, clinging to the divine, clinging to the life force, which means that wherever we might find ourselves, in whichever situation, in whichever discomfort, in whichever calamity, in whichever state of physical despair or psychological despair, yet we can cling to the divine, which is the life force within that allows for perception. And therefore, if we are aware, then right there with us is the divine that's allowing us to be aware. He is sharing with us his power. He knows all that is, not through imagination, not even through intelligence, but because it's his essence that's dressing up. Therefore he knows. And he shares with us a ray of that knowing through awareness, through perception, through imagination. He dresses up in all these garments in order to make himself known in the lower realms. And so within awareness, which in itself is a light, there is light and darkness. And as long as there is just the imagination, as long as the awareness hasn't realized that it's receiving life from beyond itself, it's in darkness. It doesn't know how to attach itself to life, to reality. It looks outside. It listens to people. It reads books. The imagination is searching for something real to hold on to. It will never find anything real to hold on to in those worlds. If it finds holiness, if it finds sparks of light, it will find information that's going to guide it towards the source that is beyond the senses, the source that cannot be perceived, the source that can be known through intelligence, but cannot be drawn with the imagination. And so then there will be light. And then, through intelligence, the imagination learns to distinguish darkness from light, truth from illusion. holiness from impurity. And then the imagination serves the light. The imagination serves the truth. The imagination serves the divine, the real, the one, the being that is, not through a philosophical conclusion, not through a conviction of words, but through an attachment to the light that gives it life, the light that shines through it, the light that is it. The ray remembers its source and remembers that it's shining that source. The awareness knows that it can only know because of the one who knows, that dwells within it. The one who knows everything because he is the essence. And he shares that knowing with the awareness of the individuals so that they can know him. They cannot know him how he knows himself, but they can know him the way that he appears within their awareness. And there lies the distinction between the individuals. What's the value of an individual? What's the accuracy of an individual? How can we measure an individual? The measure of the individual is based on the ability of that soul to perceive the source within its awareness. The ability of that soul to be accurate to the source. The ability of that soul to shine the light of the knowledge that the one, the source, knows himself in accordance with how he has become available within perception. Each one has a different level. Each one knows from a different angle, from a different aspect, through a different lens. The highest levels of perception are called prophecy. And even between the prophets, there are many levels of perception, one beyond the other, all measured based on how many of the layers of illusion, how many of the layers of imagination have been peeled, so that the intelligence knows and it can explain to the imagination what it knows without hiding that light. There's always going to be a veil, but how thick is the veil? How much metaphor are we using to describe the absolute? How distant is what's being perceived from what it's trying to perceive? The truth, when it will be revealed, the truth whenever it was revealed, to whoever it was revealed, is liberation. There is no other type of liberation. Liberation is from imagination. And who liberates the awareness from imagination? Only the truth. There's no other imagination that will liberate the imagination. This is the illusion that people have gone through again and again, only to rediscover that it's just another veil. It's just another level of illusion. But the truth that is behind the curtain, that is behind awareness, that is behind what can be perceived, that lives in all and allows them to perceive, that truth, the more that light gets revealed, the more there is liberation to the soul, because it's no longer enslaved to the illusion. It's no longer serving false idols. It's no longer serving things that it can perceive, things that it can read, things that it can come in contact with, things that it can do, people, stories, metaphors. The more the truth becomes present, the less power all the fragments have. And then the unity becomes revealed. This is what we are all looking forward to, is the day when the unity will reign supreme and all the fragments will surrender to that unity. The illusion will no longer stand before the divine light that pervades all. This is what it's called HaKadosh Baruch Hu moitzi chama min artika. The sun comes out from its vessel, comes out from its cover. The truth, which has been covered in a veil of illusion, becomes revealed, and all the illusion gets consumed by the truth. Then there's no longer room for lies. There's no longer room for evil. There's no longer room for all the afflictions that have caused so much harm to humanity over the history of all the nations who came with their own stories, with their own illusions, with their own ways of designing the external, as if in the external we can find some type of a redemption. And so the real redemption will be from all the fake redemptions. The real liberation will be from all the stories and the cultures that have enslaved us in the name of pretending to make things better. Anything external can only make things worse. It can never be accurate to the whole. It can never be a representative of what is. What is all-inclusive. Nothing external can represent him. Everything external is just a fragment of his light. And external doesn't just mean outside our bodies. External means outside our awareness. Everything outside our awareness does not represent accurately the life force that is inside our awareness, that is what's giving power to our awareness. And so this is called returning. Returning means returning to the soul. From where are we returning? From everything that we have perceived, that we thought has great importance. And then we came to realize that it was just a ray. It was just a way of how our soul dressed up. It was just a fragment of light that got dressed in our perception. And when we return to the soul, we no longer have any requirements about what we need to perceive. Perception is a faithful servant to the life force that is perceiving. Perception no longer creates conflict for the life force. The soul knows itself and knows its source within perception. Not by drawing something, not by knowing how to draw itself. There's nothing to draw. It's the intelligence that's aware, that realigns its loyalties to where the truth lies, to where the truth comes forth from. It's like if a servant is taking care of the palace of the king, and he's never seen the king, and so he might actually get in the way of the king while he's taking care of the palace. And so when the servant becomes aware of the king, suddenly he knows why he's taking care of the palace, and then his service is accurate to the king and to his will. As long as he was taking care of the palace and he didn't know the king, he is violating the will of the king while he is trying to take care of the palace. And so he might not allow the king access to certain areas because he says, hey, they just cleaned this room. Sorry, you cannot enter. Or, now is not a time for a meal, therefore you cannot be where the food is. Or you cannot access the bedroom because right now the servants are coming in to clean the bedroom. He's directing the king based on his illusion of what it means to take care of a palace. And he doesn't realize, no, the only reason you're taking care of the palace is because of the king. You are here to serve the king, no one else and nothing else. The king wants to eat, now is the time to eat. The king wants to sleep, now is the time to sleep. The king wants to go for a walk. The king needs no reason to do what he is doing. He needs no justification and no explanation. The servant needs to surrender all his ideas of what it means running a palace to the will of the king. And as the will of the king changes, the servant needs to change immediately. There's no room for the servant to hold any will when it contradicts the will of the king. The same goes for awareness. Awareness serves the soul. Awareness doesn't serve anything or anyone else. When awareness is serving the external world, when the awareness is serving the body, when the awareness is serving things that it's drawing, imagining, hallucinating, the soul is the one that suffers. So therefore we return to awareness. Returning to awareness means we identify that we are the one that is directing this force. And we become aware of the king that dwells within. We become aware of the life force. We become aware of the collective will, the life of all that dwells within that life force. And we realign our service to that source. Whatever it might be, it needs no justification or explanation. When the awareness knows how to cling to the source, peace is what is achieved. The organs, the limbs, the imagination, the spirits, they all come to rest as they understand their purpose, they understand their duty. As long as they weren't aware of the king, they were arguing with each other, each one having its own intention, its own desire, each one trying to serve a different cause. And as they unite to one will and to one cause and to one purpose, they can all live in peace. They can all return to their rightful duty, which is to serve the one that dwells within all. First, on the individual level, the soul that dwells within all organs, within all particles, within all functions. And then, on the collective level, the soul that dwells within all humans, within all creatures, within all beings. And this is the unification that we call liberation. When the one, the divine, will be king upon all. He will be one, as he always was and always will be, but also his name, the knowledge we have of him, the understanding, the way that he is perceived, will unite as one within all.